So there will be a few people coming in as we go along, but I want to just say to you all, karibuni sana, a very warm welcome. And give me a second. I'm just going to... Karibuni sana, a warm welcome to you all to today's webinar. The title of this is Business and Biodiversity, How Tanzania Can Become a Nature Positive Economy. So there are people still coming in, that's fine, but I'm going to get going now. My name is Paul Harrison. I'm the chair of the Britain Tanzania Society, and it's the Britain Tanzania Society that is your host today. Can everyone hear me okay? Just put thumbs up if you can. And can you see me okay? Good. All right, well, we'll carry on. So my pleasure to host this webinar today. Tanzania's natural beauty, its abundant wildlife, are not just national treasures, they are global assets. From the iconic plains of the Serengeti to the vibrant coral reefs of the Zanzibar archipelago, these ecosystems support livelihoods, they drive tourism, they provide essential resources below and above ground. But the question looms, can Tanzania continue to benefit from this natural wealth without losing it? So can Tanzania have its cake and eat it in terms of nature and being nature positive? So that's the challenge we're here to explore in this brief hour. We can explore how we move beyond simply minimizing harm, but also strive to create a more nature positive economy, one where business not only avoids negative impacts, but actively contributes to restoring and enhancing. If you could all mute if you're not being asked to speak, thank you. So we may also explore whether it's not just an environmental imperative, but actually a business opportunity. So over the next hour, we'll delve into strategies, into innovations, into policies, into sectors that look at where we can pave our way for a nature positive future for Tanzania. We have an esteemed keynote speaker and a panel of experts eager to share their insights. So let's explore how business can thrive alongside nature, not at its expense. So our format today is going to involve a keynote speaker, then 5-minute interventions from 5 specialists over a panel, and then there will be an opportunity for a Q&A. So I invite you at the Q&A stage, those of you who have joined in as members, to actively participate, to ask questions and challenge any assumptions, just to use the chat function. Please, when you get that opportunity to chat, pose your question in the chat, stating who you are, the question, of course, and to whom the question is directed, but just hold on for the time being. I would now like to invite our keynote speaker to the virtual stage. Calling in today actually from her native Tanzania, our speaker, Elizabeth Mrema, is the United Nations Assistant Secretary General. She's the Deputy Director of the UN Environment Programme, and she's had critical leadership roles in the formation of the Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, the TNFD. So welcome, Elizabeth. Karibu sana, and over to you. Thank you.
Asante sana, Paul. Probably I should also say karibu to you and all members of the society. First, many thanks to the society for the opportunity and privilege accorded to me to speak about my beautiful home country, Tanzania. And today, likely, I'm actually in Tanzania at the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro, where it is very cold, and my dressing indicates that. And here, I would like to talk about the vital role that Tanzania plays as a haven of biodiversity and its potential as a global role model for nature positive economy. But let me begin with a reminder quote from our late Wangari Maathai, who once said, and I think it holds truth to date, that, and I quote, "The environment," in our case here, or nature, so the environment and the economy are really both two sides of the same coin. If we cannot sustain the environment or nature, we cannot sustain the economy, and thus we cannot sustain ourselves. As if that was not enough, Christopher Dodd equally had the same words, but he put it differently, but interpreted the same. And he said, "We learned that economic growth and environmental nature protection can and should go hand in hand." So the essence of these quotes will actually underline my entire message with you today. I very much know that this audience needs no introduction to the natural wonders of this country, Tanzania. From the plains of the Serengeti to the mangrove forests of the Rufiji Delta, or as Paul indicated earlier, from the coral reefs of Zanzibar and Pemba to the peaks of Meru and Kilimanjaro. Literally, Tanzania has long been a world leader in conservation. And there are a few statistics to demonstrate that. National parks, for instance, cover 50% of this country's land, and about 44% of all land is under some form of protection or conservation management. Tanzania is among the world's most diverse countries with over 55,000 confirmed species. The country is also a home to 1/3 of the total plant species and 20% of the large mammal species in this continent. Of course, not forgetting the diverse ecosystem, which includes savanna, forests, mountains, coastal areas, all of which provide a habitat for a variety of fauna and flora. So let me go on. First, we need to be, and we must be vigilant to the threats to these ecological riches, since we all know how much Tanzania's economy is heavily dependent on its natural resources. For instance, if I look at tourism, it contributes approximately $2.6 billion annually, literally making 17% of the global GDP and employing millions of Tanzanians. If we look at agriculture, which accounts to about 25% of the GDP and employs over 65% of the workforce. And if we look at mining, with approximately 7% contribution to GDP, makes it to be a vital sector with significant contributions from gold, diamonds, but other minerals also included. These sectors, with the contribution to Tanzania's GDP, clearly favors country's economy to align with international trends and benefit from nature-positive approaches. However, we know agriculture is expanding, urban development is increasing, infrastructure projects also increase, all of which are so important for the economic development of the country. But sadly, if not well done, are also leading to habitat destruction and degradation. And if we look at the years between 2001 and 2020, the country lost approximately 2.4 million hectares of tree cover, literally 10% decrease since the year 2000. Climate change, changing rainfall patterns have all led to increased droughts, impacting both wildlife and agriculture. And regrettably, poaching and illegal wildlife trade remain critical issues in the country, because despite prominent efforts that the country has undertaken, it has still lost over 60% of its elephant population between 2009 and 2014. Notwithstanding, protecting and promoting the value of the environment can really help Tanzania's key to sustainable both economic and social development. The country can build business case. Sorry?
All this fantastic technology, it doesn't work. You,
Can I continue?
You see, you press this.
Sorry, someone talking in the background.
Light comes on here.
This came. No. Press again.
Where's my phone? You see, the light is.
Is it
Let me know
Jim?
if I can
Mute
continue.
yourself.
That's better, I think.
He's muted now.
Yes, thanks, Charlotte. Sorry, Elizabeth, please continue.
I had said, notwithstanding, protecting and promoting the value of environment can be the country's key to sustainable economic and social development. The country can build a business case out of its rich biodiversity in several ways, and I would like to give few examples to illustrate the point. One, Tanzania can leverage the significant international frameworks which focus on sustainable and nature-positive business practices. Paul has mentioned the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure, which I had the privilege to lead as its co-chair, but also the 2021 UN Common Biodiversity Approach, and also the 2022 Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which I also, as Paul has indicated, I had the privilege to lead from its negotiation to its adoption. All this highlight the need for businesses to incorporate biodiversity into their operations and reporting. This shift offers Tanzania an opportunity to attract green investments and enhance its global market access. Two, investing in sustainable tourism and conservation can create jobs, support local communities, and ensure the protection of natural habitats. And with increased awareness, tourists can increasingly be cautious of their environmental footprint. In the latest, for instance, Tanzania's budget indicated that tourism has actually taken over from mining as the major foreign exchange earner, and therefore has plenty of scope to grow further within the sustainable and responsible boundaries. Consequently, through sustainable tourism practices, Tanzania can enhance biodiversity conservation while at the same time boosting economic growth. Ecotourism, for instance, could potentially increase tourism revenue by 30%. Three, Tanzania can also harness the benefits of ecosystems and biodiversity to increase agricultural productivity through improved soil health, pest control, and pollination. Sustainable agricultural practices can increase yield and resilience to climate change, improve food security, and create new market opportunities for organic and sustainable produced crops. So the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization has shown that agroforestry, which integrates tree and shrubs into farming systems, can increase crop yields by up to 56%. Four, Tanzania's rich biodiversity offers potential for pharmaceuticals and biotechnology if carefully managed. And five, there is a growing global market for eco-friendly produce, which will be worth an estimated $150 billion by next year. So the country is well placed to take advantage of this trend if it adopts sustainable practices, enhance brand reputation, and meet the consumer demands for ethical products and reduce regulatory risks and impacts. So by grasping these opportunities and to be able to get the benefit out of them, we require careful management. And why am I saying so? That will require careful management. One, exploiting natural resources for economic growth must be balanced with conservation efforts. Overexploitation can lead to habitat loss and biodiversity decline, undermining long-term sustainability. Two, investment is needed to transition to sustainable practices in tourism, agriculture, and mining, including for technology, training, and infrastructure. So securing the finances and the resources needed for technology, training, and infrastructure. Furthermore, attracting investments in green technologies and sustainable projects will require a conducive economic environment. And going back to what we do, our UNEP Finance initiative is actually working with institutions to help those flows of investment. And here is yet another opportunity. And three, the regulatory framework should need to be strengthened to enforce sustainable practices, including stringent environmental impact assessments, monitoring, and compliance mechanisms, which again require financial resources and capacities. So, to be able to transition towards a nature-positive economy where business and biodiversity strive together, there are some key strategic actions that will need to be taken and which then Tanzania should equally consider. And which are these? One, for instance, environmental policies and regulations need to incentivize sustainable practices and penalize environmental degradation. Two, it needs to strengthen and foster public-private partnership to enhance greater cooperation between government, private sector, NGOs to help promote conservation projects and sustainable business models. Three, the country must continue to invest in conservation, including the management of protected areas and restoration of degraded ecosystems. And according to the World Economic Forum, every dollar invested in nature restoration, it actually brings about at least $9 of economic benefits. So there is value there. Four, Tanzania need to promote environmental education and awareness among the public and businesses and encourage sustainable practices. And five, it should support equally research and development in biodiversity and ecosystem services to encourage innovation in sustainable technologies and practices. So, ladies and gentlemen and friends of Tanzania, to conclude, we at United Nations Environment Programme continue to be proud of our long and productive relationship with the government, with Tanzania, and will continue to collaborate and encourage the country's efforts in becoming a nature-positive economic powerhouse. I'm looking forward to hearing the innovative, diverse contributions of today's panel and how then they can believe this can be a reality. And let me leave you again with another quote from Paul McCartney, who once said, "There must be a better way to make things we want, a way that does not spoil the sky or the rain or the land." End of quote. Therefore, to transition to green and nature-positive economy can well be achieved without compromising that same nature which sustains all of us as a source of life and a source of economic development that is dependent on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for those insightful reflections and for the clear steps and for the clear strategic pathways that you have laid out for us. It's clear that the path to a nature-positive economy in Tanzania is not just a theoretical concept, but actually is a tangible opportunity as long as we follow certain steps to do so, and indeed is an absolute necessity. So thank you very much indeed, Elizabeth, for that keynote. And I hope that you'll be able to stay on with us for the rest of the session now. Fantastic. So without further ado, I'm going to move straight into welcoming our panelists. We have 5 specialists here today. Each comes from a slightly different background, and we've deliberately done so in order to get some different perspectives. So we can expect a range of viewpoints, a range of personal experiences. We will start with Anna Rabin, looking at mining and mining investment. We will then move to Jasper Makala, discussing forestry and civil society. Moving on then to Joyce Erasto Kombe, looking at heritage management. Then on to Matthew Souse, looking at tourism, but from the blue economy point of view. And then last but not least, we will turn to James Lizer, looking at nature investment, new forms of nature investment and the community perspective. So each is going to have 5 minutes, and then there will be an opportunity for QA thereafter. So I will now invite Anna, and I think, Laura, you've got a PowerPoint.
Super,
So,
thank you so much. If you can pop to the next slide for me. I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to be fast. My name is Anna Rabin. I am the founder of Above Ground Advisory and Australia's Honorary Consul to Tanzania, so based in Dar es Salaam. I'm not a biodiversity expert. I'm a mining regulatory expert. However, in my recent research, of course, in recent weeks, it's my general view of how the mining sector plays into this is that it is a balancing act. If we can pop to the next slide. In terms of Tanzania has long been a developed mining economy. And from the government perspective and the focus of the current administration of President Suluhu, mining is a key pillar of the economy and the economic growth. There is an aim that by 2025, mining will comprise 10% of GDP, a significant increase from 5 years ago. And mining is also integral to foreign exchange. As Elizabeth mentioned, it is tourism and then mining. However, I think the COVID experience in Tanzania, which was replicated globally, really reinforced the fact that having too many eggs in one basket from a foreign exchange perspective was challenging. So I believe that the current administration, supported by the ministry, there is a focus on growing all levels, small, medium, and large scale of the mining sector. But Tanzania has well-regulated and well-established regulations and legislation. We've been a large-scale gold mining economy since the mid-1990s, and we're governed by robust legislation covering mining broadly, local content regulations, which I'll get to in a moment, but they really do help ensure localized supply chains, which can have many benefits, and also environmental matters covered by the Environmental Management Act and regulated by NEMKI. It's also interesting to think when we talk about mining in Tanzania, that what are we mining? Traditionally, it's gold, coal, tanzanite, and diamonds. But the exploration sector is far more diverse, both geographically and from a commodity perspective, which poses opportunities and risks from a biodiversity perspective. We're looking at commodities such as nickel, graphite, heavy mineral sands along the Tanzanian coast, uranium, lithium, and also helium, which is classified under mining in Tanzania. We can just pop to the next slide for me, please. This is a snapshot of some projects, not all projects, but it highlights the geographical spread. And this encompasses operating mines and some projects that are pre-construction. And I think when we're linking this into the biodiversity piece and what it means to be nature positive, some of the key aspects I've really been looking at are the what, the why, the where, the who, and the why. In terms of what, there is a conception about some right, some wrong about the political environmental damage of mining in all countries. But mining and the techniques used are incredibly diverse. Tanzania actually has significant exploration, including mining licenses and large-scale mining licenses for heavy mineral sands on the coast. This is a bit of a commodity where you can do progressive rehabilitation. You can create nature corridors, wetlands. In my home country, Australia, we've actually seen efforts to increase biodiversity as part of mine closure plans. When we're looking at the where, this is also very important, with positives and negatives. There's been some highly publicized exploration of uranium in game reserves in Tanzania, and that required legislative and regulatory change to allow that. But if we look at some of the graphite exploration and pre-construction projects, geographically, a number of them are located in the south of the country, near Mtwara and Lindi. So on the one hand, if we look at the supply chain and logistics chain that feeds into mining, there are benefits of having projects closer to an export point, such as the Mtwara port. But there's also risks in terms of what that looks like from a congestion point of view as well. In terms of who's doing the mining, obviously all companies and players in Tanzania must respect and adhere to the legislation and regulation. Some companies are also governed either by listing requirements or funding requirements to the IFC principles. And we see that often as an increased sort of compliance step, particularly when it comes to the environmental implications of mining. An example is, whilst the EIA is always granted by NEMC in Tanzania, if you are following IFC principles, you must do baselining in the wet season and the dry season to ensure that the fuller and more robust picture is captured. We can also look at the impact of the local content regulations, which have done a fantastic job in ensuring that the supply chain is localized. This often means that the supply chain comes closer to the mine site. But again, if we have clusters of industry, there's a knock-on effect from a biodiversity perspective as well. And in terms of the why we're doing this, which is quite a broad question, there was a push under the former administration for increased downstream processing in Tanzania. This led to the banning of concentrate exports. It also led to the construction of multiple refineries in Tanzania. And this is where I see the balancing act. Tanzania is a country that aims to have mining as 10% of GDP, also needs to capitalize on the downstream processing in country to fully realize the economic benefit. But building and operating refineries come with potential risk, and significant it can be to the environment and the biodiversity in the areas that surround them. So I think that's where, when I said it's sort of a balancing act, and I see this push towards downstream processing as kind of really encapsulating that. And then if we sort of, I guess, just flip quickly, I know I'm on a time to the last slide, in terms of sort of the main topics, in terms of the what, the where, the who, and the why. I think part of this, we need to think about who owns the project. Obviously, the minerals themselves are governed by the Republic of Tanzania, but which companies are in charge? Do they follow, at a minimum, one would hope, local legislation and regulation, and or do they also adhere to the IFC principles? And a lot of that is driven by listing requirements, but also funding requirements. And we're seeing a lot more debt financiers coming in with IFC standards as a non-negotiable for the funding. So there's kind of the carrot and the stick approach, I think, to sort of what mining sector can do to biodiversity. I think who's funding and who's operating the projects has a significant impact. But I think also how the country, very much driven by the government, manages the desire to have downstream value captured in Tanzania rather than exporting raw materials, and that potential impact on the biodiversity and the environment more broadly is something that I think we're probably still grappling with. I've gone just over my 5 minutes, but I tried.
Well timed, well timed. Thank you, Anna. Thanks so much for that. We will jump straight into now an opportunity for Jasper Vicalo. I hope he's online.
Yes.
Yes, you are, sir. Thank you. Over to you. If you could start your video, that would
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, I'll not switch on my video because I'm worried the internet might go. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. No problem.
Sorry for that. Thank you for the opportunity. For me, I will speak on forest conservation specifically, but on the overall nature conservation in general. I will pick the discussion poll, which Paul shared. I'll start with the first one, which is about the opportunities and the challenges for the businesses incorporating biodiversity conservation into the operations and the value chains. I think speaking for Tanzania, for example, my organization, Pingo Conservation Development Initiative, MCDI, we are supporting community forest conservation, but also the forest we are supporting their certified international standards, Forest Stewardship Council certification. And companies which they are sourcing FSC certified timber from these forests, they are struggling because there is a lack of incentives. Because if you are doing FSC certification, you have incorporated 100% issues with regard to biodiversity conservation, because that's one of the compliance when you are dealing with FSC certification. But those companies, even the communities, which they are complying to biodiversity conservation issues through Forest Stewardship Council certification, there is no incentive at all. So, because companies which they've incorporated biodiversity and they're incurring a bit more of cost in their operation because of that international compliance. But when they go to the market, they want to sell legally sourced forest products, then that can't compute it because they will be a little bit expensive compared to those which have been illegally sourced. And there is no incentives from the government to those companies which they are incorporating or complying to biodiversity issues. That means if other companies, they want to do that, if there is no incentive, there is that reluctance because of to incorporate biodiversity aspects because cannot see the clear incentives. I will also touch on the role of government policy in supporting nature economy in Tanzania. This is kind of related to the first point because the police need to come up with clear incentives. So that's one. Secondly, the police need to be enabling, to creating enabling environment for the nature positive businesses in our country. Also, the government need to be adaptive to emerging national and global changes so that we'll be able to tap into the emerging opportunities. The last one, we'll talk about the innovative financing mechanism for biodiversity. I think what we've been suffering in our country when it comes to forestry, nature conservation, natural resource management is the sustainability plan. Because what is lacking is the long-term sustainable funding models. Most of the intervention initiatives, they are externally financed based on short-lived program or projects. When the program or projects they've ended, it has been difficult how to sustain the good intervention for biodiversity conservation, for nature positive economy in our country. So that is lacking. And so now what is needed is an innovative funding mechanism for the biodiversity conservation and overall forest conservation intervention. And what is needed here is a long-term funding being developed, a sustainable funding model through a mix of revenue stream and partnership. So a mix of revenue stream and partnership. When I say partnership, I refer also the private partners, whereby we can enter into one example will be a corporate sponsorship, whereby we partner with the private sector companies for their financial support in exchange for branding and recognition. This is the one way, because if we enter with private companies, they have a long-term business operations, and that is a way get a win-win situation for those intervention. And also this private partnership business model will aim to leverage the strengths of these various stakeholders so that we can address the issues of biodiversity conservation, climate challenges more effectively, while we ensure long-term sustainability and impacts.
Thank you, Mikhail. I think we're going to have to, we'll draw it to a close there, just to give everyone else time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we'll hear a bit more, hopefully, at Q&A. So I'm going to just ask now for Joyce Erasto-Kombe to come on, and I think you have a PowerPoint that Laura will kindly be able to share. Thank you very much, Joyce. Joyce, you need to unmute yourself. Let me try and do that for you. There you go.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Joyce. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Joyce Kombe. I'm an assistant lecturer from the College of African Wildlife Management, and I'm also a PhD candidate in heritage management at the University of Dar es Salaam. Today, I'm glad to talk about heritage and the economy of Tanzania. Basically, I'll base more on the role of tourism industry in boosting local economy. In this year, 2024, it is estimated that it will be a record-breaking year for tourism, according to World Travel and Tourism Council, whereby we are expecting about 11.1 trillion US dollar to global economy, more than 1.5 billion tourists globally, and more than 330 million employment, which are direct, leave alone indirect, which are sometimes difficult to quantify. And why this trend this year? Because of what is known as revenge tourism, after COVID, whereby people want to go out after the lockdown, and they have accumulated some wealth, some income, which they want to spend outside their normal environment. So with that trend or that big number of tourism, what can Tanzania offer to get just a portion of it? Tanzania is blessed with a lot of natural resources, both natural and it's blessed with heritage, both natural and the cultural heritage. Natural heritage include all natural resources and biodiversity that make up a landscape. And in Tanzania, we have different types of wildlife, birds, without forgetting the world's last remaining large mammal migration in Serengeti, which is not found anywhere in the world. In the cultural part, normally relates to humanity, whereby it tells about people, their way of life, and the legacy that is expected to be taken forward to the future. And in Tanzania, we have culture, arts, museums, and ancient settlements along the coast, which tells a lot about people past, present, and expectation in the future. We also have mountains, including the Kilimanjaro, which is the tallest mountain in Africa and the tallest freestanding volcanic mountain in the world. We have most beautiful beaches, which are very clean along the coast, with crystal clear water, white sand, which can be potential places for people to visit and relax while they're in our country. We also have different cuisines from different tribes. As we know, we have more than 120 tribes in Tanzania. So we have a diversified cuisines, including food, wine, spices, which are simply the best. We have people in Tanzania who are known for their friendliness, they're warm, open, loving, and they would like to welcome everyone to visit them in this country. So with all those potentials, what is the future of Tanzania tourism? We're expecting for a more sustainable tourism in terms of economic, social, and environment, whereby we ensure that there's balance in all three aspects. We are also expecting for more responsible, whereby there is respect for community and their cultures. And we are also expecting to have more smart tourism, whereby everyone can get information through ICT-based solution and make decisions before they come to our country. We can't achieve all those but we need a lot of collaborators and potential stakeholders to achieve those. And we need local government who can regulate what is to be done. We need tourists who are potential customers. We need local communities who are the custodians of these resources. We need tourism business, investors, utility suppliers to give us electricity, water, internet. We need transport operators, NGOs, and tourism employees. So what are the strategies for sustainable tourism in Tanzania? Most important, we need to analyze the social, economic, and cultural need. What do we want? And after analyzing this, it is easy to start. Then from there, we will have to measure the tourism growth driver and the barriers, which will help us to know what we can and what we cannot do. We also have to use tourism as an asset for economic growth. And here I would like to talk about Royal Tour, whereby our president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, launched in 2020, and so far it has caused a lot of it has resulted into increased number of tourists in our country, and it is estimated that more than 1.2 billion people are aware of Royal Tour in the world. So you can imagine if just a fraction of it decide to come to our country, it means that our economy will be boosted to the higher level. And also it is important to encourage local communities involvement in planning and decision making, because these are custodians of this resource, and they're all the time. Once they are involved, and they just feel sense of ownership, and it will be easy to conserve these resources. So in Tanzania, hospitality is a way of life. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Joyce, and thanks for keeping to time as well. Right, we will now jump straight to hear about the blue economy from Matthew South. Over to you, please, Matt.
Paul, thanks very much for inviting me on. I'm used to speaking to tour operators and people in the tourism business, so forgive me if I come across as too much of a tourism person. Let me just share my screen if I may. I've got 1 or 2 slides only. That will...
Let me know if you've done it. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, I think I'm good. I think I'm good.
Yes, that's it.
See where we are. There we go. Yeah, so my name is Matthew Souse. We're a small lodge on Pemba Island, right in the north. Actually, if you can see on the map there, right by that little blue dot. So right in the northwestern point of Pemba Island. I arrived in 2006, and it was very clear to me that we had the opportunity arriving in a green field, basically, without any tourism around. We had a clear opportunity to try and see if we could assimilate into the culture of Pemba and to make a difference to the communities. And with a very strange and actually very well-known concept now, in this part of the world at least, an underwater hotel room, we decided to use that, make some waves, and then really try and answer the question as to why we were there in the first place. In talking to the communities, it became clear that where we were, it was not really understood as to why tourism was even there in the first place and what the benefits, direct benefits, would be for them or for the environment itself. So that was a very difficult question to answer. It opened up a lot more questions, as that question usually does. And it helped us to begin a discussion with the government as to what could be done in our area and why. So culminating in lots and lots and lots of mistakes in the past and lots of different formats and different organizations, we very proudly in 2021 were able to establish what we call the Blue Economy Corridor. It's the first co-management agreement established with the government of Zanzibar. It's a PP, what we call a PPCP, including community. And it is a framework that delegates the management of this marine protected area in light blue, as you can see, the management of this area to a private group, which has never been done in Zanzibar before. So I partnered with a company called Blue Alliance, who are professionals in MPA management. We're just tourism guys. But it helped very much in this whole agreement and all the work that's happened. It's helped a lot to have the community on board and the community understanding exactly what their natural resource is and how we can sustainably draw benefits from it. We've always believed that the only sustainable source or revenue stream into conservation, we believe that in our part of the world is tourism. And we've been trying to prove that successfully to a point so far, but we are a little small resort and we're a little small place that doesn't generate, well, obviously enough revenues to go around the northern part of Pemba. But we also understood that if we created this corridor, it would attract like-minded investors who were interested in nature-based tourism, proper nature-based tourism, not just beach holidays. And that if we gave the communities a really good opportunity to be involved, that together we could all benefit in not only taking care of the natural resource and all the coral reefs and the abundance of life around the area, but also a direct benefit to future generations. It's a very complex structure to go through in 5 minutes because there's so many attributes, and Paul's really put me on the spot here. There's so many attributes to this with fishing, and I mean the blue economy, so many different pillars, including mining, as example. I was listening carefully there, but there's so many pillars of the blue economy, and we just focus on our little one, tourism. So with this co-management agreement and with the Ministry of Blue Economy, we are very successfully managing the fishing regulation around this area. And for us, marine conservation is all about fishing practice. It's not really about closing off vast areas of coral reefs, etc. It's about managing fishing in the right way, in a sustainable way, and which has also brought other businesses into the fold, which is one line, one hook fishing. In fact, my son has set up a business here that does exactly that, where double benefits go to fishers for a specific kind of method of fishing, and then in turn being able to build value in that product and being able to market internationally. So it's giving the fishermen of Pemba Island an opportunity to reach a much wider market for their product. So it's a really multifaceted situation. And I mean, just being able to share this model for you is valuable for us. I mean, in the center we have Manta. If we look at this diagram here, in the center we have Manta, we have a tourism business, small. And this is the message that we give over to our guests. Every one of our guests now, and because we can defend it so well, actually pays over an impact contribution. So a donation that we call the impact contribution. And this donation goes through to the Blue Alliance, which is our partner in managing the Blue Economy Corridor, to an organization that we helped put together here called DIRA. As you all know, speak Swahili. DIRA means vision in Swahili. And this is a completely 100% community-owned organization that receives this revenue from guests and from Manta to basically build what they believe is really important to their communities. The Kwanini Foundation set up a long time ago in that whole building of the question of why being Kwanini in Swahili, is a foundation that supports livelihoods and a program that we called CASA, which is Turtle, that actually helps local entrepreneurs build up their own economies. And we've set up village banks, and there's lots of products, really innovative product that's done in a sustainable way coming out of the north of Pemba now. So that's an important part for the community. And then a direct message to our guests that they are vital to everything that we do, which we call our Blue Impact.
Fantastic, Matt. I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you for a lot of detail to be able to get across in a very tiny amount of time, which I think you did very well there. But I'll have to go on to our final speaker, so we leave a little bit of time, hopefully, for some questions. I'm happy to overrun if necessary for a few minutes. So if you could, thank you very much, Matt. So last but not least, James Liza, if you hear from you, and Laura's put up your PowerPoint there. Thank you. Over to you, please, James.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, everyone. And James Liza, and based in Arusha. I work with a company called the Nature Group. I also have another NGO, which is actually working mostly with the community in conservation. I work more in the southern Tanzania, which is area, and the southern part in general. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yes, and just we had actually a discussion, which is actually a very good overview of Tanzania. But actually, looking also, Tanzania is very unique in terms of it's actually one of the countries in the world which are located about 25% of its total area actually for conservation, forestry, and wildlife. And tourism is actually one of the major earning income, which is actually about 17% in the GDP. And the tourism sector, as actually other speakers have actually explained, had the potential actually to contribute into jobs, actually the national economy, especially the local community as well. Okay. And actually looking in the tourism opportunity in Tanzania and looking mostly on the traditional products, which actually they've been photographic tourism, which you have actually safari hunting in Tanzania. Most of the tourism happening in the northern circuit, which is actually Serengeti, the National Park, Tarangire, and the Kilimanjaro. But looking also now, we need to expand it to other areas, which is the southern circuit. We have areas like Ruaha National Park, the Katavi National Park. Actually, the President Samia was there in the last 4 and they were talking, people actually need to explore more in the area because that will make more sustainable rather than concentrating more in the northern circuit, which is the Tanzania, Serengeti, and the Kilimanjaro area in most of the time. Okay. Yeah, so actually, what we do with actually nature investment group, mostly in a larger landscape of the Ruaha, we will community and other land owner, to actually make sure that there is what you call private partnerships, because most of the land are in the community area. Community are the mostly owner of land, and land for various reasons, including actually farming and the tourism activities. For sure, in order to appreciate this investment, they need to get incentive out of it, but also we develop the system and diversify the high impact revenue models, including the carbon credits and others. And about the is to maintain and improve conservation value. Most of the area are degraded, mostly overgrazed, so we try to upgrade it and include planting and the like, so actually to make it more conservation valuable. And we act as an interface between the property, which is the land owners, and the investors, where the investors which are wishing to support the nature-based solution and biodiversity. But also we build the diversified portfolio of our essential for future liquidity. Okay. Slide, Laura. So why actually investing in Tanzania? I said earlier, is actually a very diverse country. It has actually it is in the strategic location, including the Zanzibar Islands. And also there is investment incentive, including government policies. Most of the investors came here, they actually through the Tanzania Investment Center in Tanzania, and they can get most of the incentive in Tanzania. Also, we have actually the influence of international agreements, for example, the Global Biodiversity Framework, and the influence of international initiatives like the Task Force of Nature-related disclosure on Tanzania as well. Another slide, Laura. And the potential impact we are looking in those landscapes is mostly to make sure that we actually impact people, livelihoods, and of course, the planet is much important, but also we look in creating a fund for sustainability. So the only way they said to make this possible is for creating some revenue which go back to the land and to the community living in the area. Next slide, Laura. And actually, we're looking on the we call actually innovative ways of getting this. And some of them we're looking, for example, amenities for farming values. For example, we look for intrinsic price for underdeveloped conservation land with appeal or alternative agriculture. And also expand the developed tourism, which is actually upgrade and the product diversification marketing and the repositioning interesting.
James, I'm going to have
etc.
to I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you very much for that. And Laura, I know you can close that deck for me.
Thank you, Paul.
So yeah, sorry to have to cut people short, but I just want to give a few minutes for people to react to these to obviously Elizabeth Mrema's keynote, and also to the very significant number of inputs we've had from the panelists. And I mean, I know we're on the hour now, but I'm happy to spend a few more minutes just to have a quick discussion now. If you have any if there's anything that people want to question, flag up, let's spend a couple of minutes doing that before I wrap up. Thank you. Any questions?
Paul, may I ask, please?
So Danny and then Ian. So Danny first, and then Ian.
I will apologize if the question is not 100% particular to the presentations today, but I think it has got an impact. I'm baffled even today by this so-called carbon exchange, which is between some of us who are endowed with all these natural resources, forests, etc., and those who have already polluted the air. How does it work, and how does it seriously change anything which is already been done? Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to so that's the first question. Let's see if Ian has a question. Ian Saunders.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So listening to everything in the round, what strikes me is that, as always, the question is, and it's been the question since I've been involved in conservation in Tanzania when I started in '85 with Costa Malay, is we need two things: political will and funding. And the funding is out there like it's never been out there before, particularly now with mandatory sustainability compliance regulations coming in from places like Europe, where Tanzania wants to sell its products. But also, my question being is, and really this is to Madam Mrema, is the political will there? Everything else is there, but is the political will there to move things along?
So, thanks, Ian. Elizabeth, would you want to comment on that? I know that it's a political question, so you're not a Tanzanian government official, you're a United Nations official. But if you wanted to comment on that, or indeed Danny's comment about carbon exchange, although Makala might also want to come in on that, feel free, please. I know we're over time, so just appreciate the extra time.
Just quick words on the political will and funding. I can say now more than in the past, we are seeing more and more political will. But this is just a recent phenomena, my personal observation. And is recent phenomena because the impact of environmental degradation, it has reached a point where now everybody sees. Let's talk of climate change, the drought, the floods, the earthquake, and the suffering people go through. Now we are beginning to see, as opposed in the last 10, 20 years, when we are talking about these disasters, it was too theoretical. People will not understand. So that is one. You have also mentioned on funding needed. When we talk of conservation, tourism, nature is money by itself, but only if conserved and sustained well. So there's a lot of money already in what we are doing as far as conservation is concerned. I think the question is, how are those funds distributed, managed, but also those resources which accrue funding, what kind of management is there? I think this is where we need to begin, rather than expecting funds to come outside. Let's see what is available internally as the result of the conservation of natural resources. Once we know that, then we can say if there's a gap or not. But to me, there's no gap. It is the management of those resources which is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Makala, did you want to respond to Danny's question around carbon, if you feel willing to?
Yes, yes, Paul, thank you. If I got the question correctly, I think Matthew is asking whether is it possible legally to transfer carbon credit from Tanzania to another country or to another partner? Is that the way the question is?
Danny?
Sorry, can I confirm? I'm not asking about the possibility, legalities, etc. I'm asking more on how does for example, Tanzania really, okay, we benefit financially, but how does that so-called transfer help the environment? Because the environment is already damaged. And by sending money to Tanzania to buy carbon, the country which is polluting is not reducing necessarily the pollution, and the pollution has already been done. So where are the so-called benefits of this scheme? Or is it just smokes and mirrors?
I mean, it's a big question there, Danny. I don't know if Makala, you had just had a quick snapshot view of it, because it's also not really something that's been covered in the nature of this in this webinar. So I'm not sure we can dive into it very heavily, unfortunately, Danny. Perhaps we can.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
that's no problem.
But it is nonetheless a very important subject to flag up, particularly yeah. And I can see there's a question from Belinda Majani, which I'll read out. It says, as Tanzania continues to urbanize. Oh, Makala, yes. Are you there?
Yes, I dropped. So
if you
I missed
respond,
again what.
I think we need to just.
Yes, but what I can say,
yes,
I don't have a direct answer to that, but I will confirm, and then we can still communicate. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Makala. There's a bit of a lag on some of the networks. So I just want to ask the question from Belinda Majani, which is, as Tanzania continues to urbanize, what strategies can be implemented in the built environment around urban centers to ensure that development not only supports economic growth, but also promotes biodiversity? How can urban planning and design be leveraged to create synergies between business development and biodiversity conservation in these rapidly expanding areas? Is there someone who wants to, in the panel, who wants to respond to that? Any, like, can I volunteer someone maybe? Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. It's a useful question. We cannot stop urbanization with the increased population which we see. But I think the issue is how then do we ensure that urbanization and environment do thrive together? And there are also different approaches which have emerged to ensure that the environment is well managed and conserved. One is what we call built environment, whereby that urbanization, which includes buildings, for instance, where do we get the timber? Is it sustained timber? What kind of roofing is done? What kind of space is done? How much space is left for community parks or for agriculture and the like? So it's basically looking at these two issues, both of which are important, but how can they thrive together?
Thank you. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I'm going to sort of bring things to a close now, because I think we've slightly overrun, but I really appreciate everyone hanging on for that extra 10 minutes. There was a lot to be covered today, and it's a subject that has wide-ranging impacts. So we've heard, thank you very much from Elizabeth Mrema at the beginning in your keynote, offering some very clear steps, also offering a background that is both global and national, as well as some strategic directions. We've also heard from our esteemed panel of experts today about some of the real-world challenges in Tanzania, across sectors like tourism and mining in particular, and some innovative solutions like we heard around the blue economy, for example, that are already being implemented in these sectors in Tanzania. And we've also discussed to some extent the role of government and policy and regulation, and the impact that they have, as well as sustainable financing and innovative ways of financing, and as well as international frameworks like the TNFD that Elizabeth mentioned and James also pointed to, in supporting this transition. So I think the common thread throughout these discussions today has been the recognition, perhaps, that nature is not just a backdrop for economic activity, it's actually the foundation upon which economic activity and in our economic futures, including in Tanzania, is built. So we've heard that investing in nature is also an investment into Tanzania's future prosperity. So the transition to a nature positive economy is not without its hurdles, as we've heard. It requires leadership, it requires collaboration, it requires public and private partnerships, or as Matt put it, the public, private, and community partnerships, and also a willingness to embrace new ways of doing business. So I think we've covered a lot today, but I hope that you can all, I encourage you to take the insights, the inspiration from our speakers today, from our panelists, from this webinar generally, back to your own organizations, back to your communities, back to others that you interact with, particularly in Tanzania. And let's work together to turn this sort of vision of a nature positive Tanzania into much more of a reality. So asanteni sana to our speakers, to our panelists, and all of you participants, and thanks for hanging on for those that you that did. Thank you all for your valuable questions, your contributions today. Let's continue this conversation and turn this discussion today into actions for tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for a good presentation.
Bye.
Yeah.